The rain had been falling for hours, turning the narrow forest road into a river of mud and mist. Mark's wipers squeaked back and forth, barely keeping his windshield clear. He wasn't supposed to be out this late, but work had dragged on longer than expected, and now he just wanted to get home, dry off, and forget about the exhausting day. But life has a strange way of interrupting even the simplest plans. Before we start, make sure to hit like and subscribe. And I am curious where you're watching from. Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. And sometimes those interruptions change everything. As he rounded the bend, his headlights swept across a small shape curled up on the edge of the road. At first, Mark thought it was just a pile of leaves. But then it moved. Just a tiny shift, barely noticeable. His foot hit the brake before he even thought about it. The car slid to a stop, tires hissing on wet gravel. For a few seconds, he just stared at the shape, his heart thudding. The forest was silent, except for the rain tapping on the roof. Something about that little movement didn't feel normal. It didn't feel like an animal that belonged out here. Mark opened the door and stepped outside, the cold rain soaking his clothes in seconds. He crouched near the small creature, his breath catching in his throat. It was a puppy, or at least that's what it looked like at first glance. Tiny, fragile, its fur plastered down by the rain, its little body trembling, as if it was using every last bit of strength just to stay alive. The moment Mark reached out, the creature tried to make a weak sound, something between a whimper and a breath. Hey, it's okay," Mark whispered, his voice softening on instinct. He glanced around, half expecting to see a mother dog or a hidden litter. But the forest was empty. Just darkness. Just rain. Just this little life lying on the edge of a road it clearly wasn't meant to be on. Without thinking twice, Mark scooped the puppy into his jacket. It was shockingly cold. Too cold. He could feel its heartbeat against his palm, fast, shallow, scared. He rushed back to his car, turned up the heater, and wrapped the puppy in an old scarf he kept in the glove compartment. The creature didn't fight. It didn't cry. It just curled into the warmth as if it had been waiting for someone, anyone, to help. Mark drove straight toward town, nerves buzzing. He loved animals, but he wasn't an expert. Still, he knew enough to understand one thing. This puppy needed help now, not tomorrow. And the only place open at this hour was a 24-hour emergency vet clinic near the main highway. While driving, he kept glancing at the puppy nestled in the passenger seat. Its eyes were half open, dark and glassy. He couldn't tell what breed it was. The rain and dirt made it impossible to see its real colors, and something about the shape of its ears looked different. Not in a bad way, just unusual. Almost like it wasn't fully developed yet. Maybe it was a newborn. Maybe it had gotten separated from its mother. The thought made Mark's chest ache with worry. Every few minutes, the puppy gave a small twitch or squeak, and Mark would talk to it again just to keep it calm. "You're okay. I've got you. Just hang in there. We're almost there." His tone was gentle, the same tone he used years ago with his childhood dog when it was scared of thunderstorms. By the time he reached the clinic, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. Mark rushed inside, his jacket pressed against his chest, holding the puppy close. The receptionist looked up in surprise, her eyes widening when she saw the wet bundle. "It's freezing," Mark said quickly. "I found it on the road. Please, can the vet take a look?" The receptionist didn't waste a second. She led him straight to an exam room where Dr. Harris, a middle-aged veterinarian with kind eyes and a calm presence, stepped in almost immediately. His hands were steady, practiced, the hands of someone who had seen both miracles and heartbreak. Mark carefully placed the puppy on the exam table, suddenly feeling nervous without knowing why. Dr. Harris examined the creature gently, turning it slightly, brushing damp fur aside, checking its breathing. At first, his expression stayed neutral, focused, but then something shifted. His brow tensed, his eyes narrowed. His hands slowed down, no longer moving with the same confident rhythm. Mark felt a cold wave wash over him. Is this something wrong? The vet didn't answer right away. He leaned in a little closer, lifting the puppy's tiny paw, then examining the shape of its head. His face went pale, so pale that even the nurse standing beside him noticed and stepped closer, as if expecting him to say something serious. "Doctor?" she asked quietly. Dr. Harris finally looked up at Mark, and for a moment he seemed to search for the right words. "Where exactly did you find this puppy?" Mark swallowed. The hesitation in the vet's voice made his stomach twist. "On the forest road, near Ridge Bend." "Why? What's wrong with it?" Dr. Harris exchanged a short, tense glance with the nurse, then stepped back slightly, almost as if he needed space to think. He rubbed his jaw, his eyes never leaving the tiny creature trembling on the table. Whatever he had noticed, it wasn't something simple. It wasn't something he saw every day. His silence filled the room with a heavy tension Mark could almost feel on his skin. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower, careful. "Mark, I need you to stay calm. But I don't think this is what you believe it is." Mark's breath caught. His mind scrambled for meaning. "What do you mean?" "It's a puppy. I saw it on the road. It was freezing. It needs help." The vet shook his head slowly. "It does need help." But he stopped again, his lips pressed tightly together, his face still pale. "Before I say anything, I need to run a few tests. And I need to call someone, just to be sure." Call someone? For a puppy? Nothing about this made sense. And yet Mark could tell, deep down, that whatever was happening wasn't normal. The vet wasn't acting like this was just an injured stray. He was acting like he had stumbled onto something he wasn't prepared for. "What's going on?" Mark asked, his voice unsteady. Dr. Harris looked at him with an expression Mark couldn't read. Not fear, not anger. Something else. Something heavier. "I'll explain everything," he said quietly. "But not yet, not until I confirm it." Mark felt the room close in around him. He glanced at the tiny creature, lying so helplessly on the metal table. He had only tried to save a puppy. That's all. So why did the vet look like he had just uncovered something dangerous? Or something impossible? As the nurse gently carried the creature to another room, and Dr. Harris stepped out to make a phone call, Mark stood frozen, listening to the faint sounds echoing through the clinic. He didn't know what the vet had seen. He didn't know why the man had turned pale. But one thing was clear. Whatever he had rescued that night, it was no ordinary puppy. Mark stood alone in the small exam room, the hum of the overhead light buzzing softly above him. He rubbed his hands together, both to warm himself and to calm the nervous energy running beneath the skin. His clothes were still damp from the rain, but he barely felt the cold anymore. All he could think about was the way Dr. Harris had looked at the little creature, how the man's face had gone pale in a way that no ordinary injury or illness would cause. He paced slowly, glancing every few seconds at the closed door the nurse had disappeared through. The clinic felt different now. When he had first rushed in carrying the trembling bundle, it had been a place of safety and certainty. But now, the hallway outside seemed too quiet, like everyone was waiting for something they weren't sure they wanted to happen. Mark tried to steady his breathing. He kept replaying every detail of the moment he found the puppy on the side of the forest road. The tiny movements, the strange shape of its ears, the sound it had tried to make, a sound that didn't quite match the cry of any puppy he'd heard before. But he brushed those thoughts aside. Animals can look different. They can be hurt or underdeveloped. They can make odd noises. That didn't mean something was wrong. Still, the vet's expression said otherwise. He leaned his hand against the cold metal table where the puppy had been lying minutes earlier. A faint damp spot remained where the creature's fur had touched it, and seeing that made Mark feel strangely protective. Whatever species it was, whatever strange details the vet had noticed, it was still helpless, still scared, still relying on the first person who stopped on that dark road. He wasn't going anywhere until he knew the truth. After nearly 10 minutes, the door finally opened. The nurse stepped in, closing it behind her with unusual care. She wasn't carrying the puppy. Instead, she held a clipboard and looked at Mark with a softness that seemed mixed with worry. "They're running some quick tests," she said gently. "Dr. Harris wanted me to check on you." Mark nodded too quickly. Is it breathing okay? Is it stable?" She hesitated just a little too long before speaking. "It's stable for now. Very weak, but it's responding to warmth." We put it in an incubator to help raise its body temperature. Good. Mark breathed. That's good. But her expression didn't relax. Her eyes flicked toward the hallway, almost nervously. It was the kind of look someone gives when they know something important but aren't allowed to reveal it. I know you're worried, she continued softly. Just try to stay calm. Dr. Harris will explain everything soon. Again with the waiting. Again with the careful, vague answers. Mark let out a slow breath and nodded. The nurse offered a sympathetic smile before slipping out of the room once more. Left alone again, Mark resumed pacing. His mind wandered to the forest road. How empty it had been. How strange the night it felt even before he saw the small creature on the ground. He remembered the mist drifting through the trees, the way the headlights seemed swallowed by the fog. It was a kind of night where anything could hide just a few feet off the road, unseen. Maybe the mother dog had been nearby. Maybe something scared the litter, causing them to scatter. He tried to cling to simple explanations, but the uneasiness inside him only grew. Finally, after what felt like an hour, but was probably closer to 15 minutes, the door opened again. Dr. Harris stepped inside slowly, holding a folder. His expression was more controlled now, but the tension hadn't faded. If anything, he looked even more serious. "Mark," he said quietly, "thank you for waiting. Is it okay?" Mark blurted out, "Did something happen? Why did you—" The vet lifted a hand gently. "It's alive, and we're taking good care of it. But I need to talk to you about what you found tonight." Mark's chest tightened. "It's not a puppy, is it?" Dr. Harris let out a breath, then closed the folder without opening it. "I can't say for certain yet. Some of the physical characteristics don't match any common dog breed. The head shape, the paws, even the fur pattern, and it's extremely young, much younger than a puppy would normally be alone." "So what is it?" Mark asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The vet didn't answer immediately. He pulled out the stool and sat down, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "Before I explain my suspicions, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Did you see anyone near the area where you found it? Any cars? Any movement in the trees? Anything unusual at all?" Mark replayed the moment again in his mind. The rain, the bend in the road, the empty forest. "No," he said slowly. "I didn't see anyone. The road was empty. Quiet. Just the puppy." Dr. Harris exchanged another look with the nurse, who had slipped in behind him without Mark noticing. She held a phone in her hand, as if waiting for instructions. The vet continued. "Did you hear anything? Any sounds coming from the forest? Any rustling or anything that seemed out of place?" Mark frowned, thinking hard. "No, nothing. I mean, the rain was loud, but I didn't hear anything else." Dr. Harris nodded again, but it didn't seem like the answer eased his concern. He rubbed a hand across his forehead. "The reason I'm asking is because animals that young don't disappear alone by chance. Someone either abandoned it or got separated from its mother in a way that usually leaves some signs." "Like what?" Mark asked. "Tracks disturb brush. Noise. A larger animal nearby." The vet's voice lowered. "But there was nothing?" Mark shook his head. "Nothing at all." The room fell into a quiet, tense silence. Mark could feel his heartbeat louder than the clock ticking on the wall. Finally, Dr. Harris opened the folder. Inside were photographs, fresh ones taken only minutes ago. He slid the first one across the table. The image showed the creature up close, its fur gently dried, its tiny limbs more visible now. Mark felt a strange chill run through him. The face was similar to a puppy's, but not identical. The snout was shorter. The ears were a slightly different shape, not pointed, not floppy, something in between. And the eyes, even closed, the shape of the eyelids looked different. "It's just young, right?" Mark asked, his voice uncertain. "That's one possibility," the vet replied. "But there's another." He turned the next photo. It showed the paws. Tiny, delicate, and with claw shapes that didn't match what Mark expected. The vet spoke carefully. "There are wild animals in our region that give birth around this time of year. Some of them have young that look similar to domestic puppies at a very early stage." Mark stared at him, confused. You think it's wild? Like a fox or something? Dr. Harris didn't answer directly. I've called a wildlife specialist who can help confirm what we're dealing with. They're on their way now. A wildlife specialist, not something a vet calls for an ordinary stray. Mark sank into the chair, trying to understand. So, it might not be a dog at all? It might, the vet said gently, but it also might not. And if it isn't, then we need to handle it very carefully, for its safety. And yours. Something in his tone made Mark look up sharply. My safety. Dr. Harris pressed his lips together. Until we know exactly what it is, we have to be cautious. Some wild animals, especially babies, can carry illnesses without showing signs yet. Mark swallowed hard. Illnesses. Wildlife. Specialists. None of this matched the tiny, shaking creature he had wrapped in a scarf just an hour earlier. He leaned forward. Can I see it? The vet paused. Not right now. It's best if we limit handling until we're sure. Mark nodded slowly, though disappointment sank heavily inside him. He wasn't scared of the creature. Not even a little. Whatever it was, it had needed him. He had been the one to stop, the one to bring it here. And now, he felt strangely responsible for whatever happened next. The nurse's phone buzzed softly. She stepped outside the room to answer it. When she returned, she whispered something into Dr. Harris's ear. His expression tightened. They're here, he said. Who's here? Mark asked. Dr. Harris stood up, smoothing his lab coat. The specialist. They'll want to examine the animal immediately, and they'll want to speak with you afterward. Mark's heart pounded again. Why me? Because you found it, the vet said simply, and because what happens next may depend on details only you know. Before Mark had asked anything else, the door opened, and someone stepped inside. Mark froze, realizing instantly that this night was far from over. And whatever he had pulled off that lonely forest road, the truth was just starting to surface. A tall woman stepped into the room, her dark hair pulled back tightly and a small case in her hand. She wasn't wearing a lab coat like the vet. Instead, she had a simple black jacket with a small embroidered patch near her shoulder. Mark couldn't see what it said, but he noticed the way Dr. Harris straightened as soon as she walked in. It was the kind of posture people had when someone important or specialized arrived. Mark, this is Dr. Lena Rowan, the vet said carefully. She works with local wildlife rescue and research. She gave him a polite nod. I understand you're the person who found the young animal? Mark nodded. Yes. I was driving home and saw it on the side of the road. I thought it was a puppy. Dr. Rowan studied him for a moment. Her eyes were calm but sharp, like she was trained to notice tiny details most people would miss. Where exactly did you find it? She asked. Mark explained again. Ridge Bend, the heavy rain, the small shape on the ground. He tried to give every detail he remembered, even the little ones that seemed unimportant. She listened closely without interruption, occasionally glancing toward Dr. Harris. When he finished, she asked quietly, Did you see any prints? Any impressions in the mud? Or hear anything unusual? No, Mark said, shaking his head. It was just lying there, completely alone. Dr. Rowan exchanged a quick look with Dr. Harris. Not fearful, more analytical, as if they were fitting puzzle pieces together in real time. She set her case on the counter and opened it, revealing clean gloves, small swabs, and tools that looked more like something from a field kit than a vet clinic. I need to examine the animal, she said. Then we'll talk. She left the room with confident steps, the door clicking softly behind her. Mark exhaled slowly. What's going on exactly? No one's telling me anything. Dr. Harris sat down again, his shoulders tight. We're not withholding information, Mark. We just don't want to misinterpret anything before we're certain. The animal you brought in, it's unusual, and unusual things require careful handling. But unusual how? Mark insisted. Is it dangerous? Dr. Harris hesitated. Not in the way you're thinking. It's extremely young, so physically it can't harm anyone. But there are species in our region that people mistake for puppies, especially when they're newly born. Some are wild, Some are protected. Some are rarely seen. Protected? Mark repeated. Yes, the vet said quietly. And if it belongs to a protected species, that means the situation is more complicated. There are guidelines we have to follow. There are laws, too. That word weighed heavily on Mark. Laws. Protected. Complicated. He rubbed his hands together, feeling restless. But I didn't do anything wrong. I just found it and tried to help. No one is saying otherwise, Dr. Harris assured him. You did the right thing. If you hadn't picked it up, it likely wouldn't have survived the night. That eased Mark's worry only slightly. He still sensed something deeper, something unspoken, beneath everything the vet had said so far. Minutes passed. The hallway was filled with faint sounds, a door opening, soft murmurs, the beep of a machine. Mark strained to hear anything that might tell him something about the animal's condition, but everything was too quiet. Finally, the door opened again, and Dr. Rowan stepped inside. Her gloves were off, neatly folded in her hand. She looked more serious now, but not alarmed. Mark, she said calmly, I need to ask you a few more questions. Please understand, this is standard procedure when someone brings in a possibly wild neonate. Neonate? Mark echoed. Very young, she clarified. Newborn. Mark nodded, still confused but listening. She stepped closer. Did you touch it with bare hands at any point? Yes, Mark said quietly. I picked it up and kept it warm on the way here. Dr. Rowan nodded thoughtfully. And did it cry or react strongly to being held? No, it barely moved, Mark recalled. It was cold and weak. Her expression softened slightly. Then you likely saved its life. That reassurance helped, but only briefly. Mark could tell from her tone that the conversation was about to shift. She continued, The animal you found, it's not a domestic dog. But before I explain more, I need to know if you've been in the Ridge Bend area often. Have you heard or seen anything unusual there in recent days? Tracks, sounds, animals acting strangely? Mark frowned. No, I don't go there regularly. Tonight was just work keeping me late. Why? Dr. Rowan seemed to weigh her words. Because the species I believe this animal belongs to hasn't been reported near Ridge Bend for years. They usually stay much deeper in the wild reserves. Finding a newborn alone at the roadside, that's highly abnormal. Mark's pulse quickened. So what species is it? She didn't answer right away. That hesitation was becoming more common and more unsettling each time. Instead, she said, Before I confirm anything, I've contacted the State Wildlife Center. They'll send someone out to help with identification and transport. Until then, we need to keep the animal stable and undisturbed. Transport, identification, state wildlife. The layers kept stacking, each one more puzzling than the last. Mark leaned back in his chair, feeling the weight of the night settle over him. Why does it need to be transported? Because if it is what I think, Dr. Rowan said softly, it will need specialized care, more than what a veterinary clinic can provide. And being a protected species means it must be documented properly. Mark's mind raced. Protected species rarely seen newborn alone. He tried to picture what the creature might be if not a puppy. But nothing made sense. Nothing fit the tiny, trembling body he had held against his chest. Can you at least tell me what it looks like now that it's cleaned up? Mark asked. Dr. Rowan paused again, studying him carefully. Smaller than a puppy. Longer limbs. Different skull shape. And its cry, it doesn't match domestic animals. The room went silent again. Mark swallowed. So what does it match? She didn't answer fully. Something wild. The understatement only deepened the mystery. Just then, the front door of the clinic opened, followed by muffled voices. The nurse poked her head into the room. They're here, she said softly. They? Mark asked. Dr. Rowan nodded. The Wildlife Center sent 2 specialists. They'll want to see the animal immediately. Her expression held a weight that Mark didn't understand yet, but he felt it in his chest, a quiet pressure of reality shifting beneath him. What had begun as a simple act of kindness had now spiraled into something he never could have expected. Something much bigger than him, or this clinic, or even the tiny creature struggling to stay alive. As footsteps approached the room and the tension thickened, Mark realized something with startling clarity. Whatever he had rescued from that rainy forest road, the truth wasn't just unusual. It was something people had been waiting for, something they didn't expect to surface here, something that might change more than just one night. And he was right at the center of it, without knowing why or what was coming next. Two people stepped into the room, both wearing dark jackets similar to Dr. Rowan's, but with different badges. One was a man in his late 40s with a calm, unreadable face. The other was a younger woman carrying a secure-looking case. Neither introduced themselves right away. Their eyes scanned the room, the hall, even the corners, as though checking for something out of place. Only after a long second did the older man give a small nod to Dr. Rowan. "Where is it?" he asked quietly. Dr. Rowan gestured toward the back hallway. "In the incubator. Stabilize." The man turned to Mark then, studying him with a seriousness that made Mark straighten instinctively. Not suspicion. Something else. Like Mark had inadvertently stepped into someone else's world. A world full of things most people never knew existed. "You found it?" the man asked. Mark nodded, suddenly feeling like his voice might crack if he spoke too loudly. "Yes, on the side of the road." It was freezing and barely moving. The man's eyebrow lifted slightly, almost respectful. "Thank you for picking it up." Most people wouldn't have stopped. His calm tone didn't ease the tension in the room, though. If anything, the weight in the air thickened. The younger woman made her way to the hallway where the creature was being kept, and Mark heard the faint sound of equipment being opened. The man motioned for Mark to sit, and then pulled up a stool across from him. Dr. Harris and Dr. Rowan remained nearby, watching closely. "Mark," the man began, "I want to be honest with you. This is not a normal situation, and the animal you found is not ordinary." Mark swallowed. "Everyone keeps saying that, but nobody's telling me what it is." The man rubbed a hand across his jaw, choosing his words. "We're close to identifying it. But before we do, I need to understand every detail about where you found it. Anything unusual, anything at all." Mark closed his eyes for a moment, forcing himself to replay the scene again. The rain, the fog, the stillness. "I swear, there was nothing else there," he said. "No tracks, no noise, no car. Just a shape on the ground. It didn't even try to run when I got close." "That's because it couldn't," Dr. Rowan added quietly. "It was too young." The man nodded. A newborn separated from its mother is extremely rare, especially for this species. Mark's heartbeat stuttered. He didn't dare ask again. Not yet. Before the man could continue, the younger woman stepped back into the room, carrying a tablet. She whispered something to him, and he stood slowly, his expression tightening. "We'll run a few more tests," the man said. "It won't take long. Just wait here." The two specialists disappeared down the hallway, leaving Mark, Dr. Rowan, and Dr. Harris in the exam room. The silence between them felt heavier now, more loaded. Mark stared at the closed door. "You said it's a protected species," he said softly. "Is it endangered?" Dr. Rowan hesitated, just briefly. "Yes." "Then why would it be near a road?" Mark asked. "Shouldn't it be in the forest? Somewhere deeper in the wild?" "That's exactly the concern," Dr. Rowan answered. "They don't travel near humans. Not unless something has gone wrong, or something has driven them out of their territory." A quiet chill slipped down Mark's spine. Driven out. Something wrong. The words echoed in his head like warnings. "What could do that?" he whispered. She didn't answer. Before Mark could ask again, a sudden sharp beep echoed from the hallway. Loud. Urgent. The kind of sound machines make when something unexpected happens. Dr. Harris's eyes widened, and he immediately rushed toward the noise. Dr. Rowan followed quickly, telling Mark to stay where he was. But Mark couldn't sit still anymore. His instincts pulled him toward the hallway. He walked fast, heart racing, until he reached the doorway to the observation room. What he saw inside stopped him in his tracks. The incubator lights were brighter now, illuminating the tiny creature inside. It wasn't crying or moving wildly, but its small body twitched, almost like it was reacting to something unseen. The specialist stood close, their expressions sharp and focused. "What happened?" Dr. Harris asked. The younger woman pointed to the monitor. Its heart rate spiked suddenly. Something scared it or triggered a stress response. "It shouldn't be reacting like this at such a young age," the older man muttered. Mark stared through the glass at the tiny creature. Even from a distance, he noticed something new, something he hadn't seen when it was wet and muddy. The fur around its neck and shoulders had begun to fluff out slightly, revealing a faint pattern. Not spots, not stripes, something more subtle, more unusual, almost like bands or markings that looked too defined to belong to a domestic animal. The older specialist turned around sharply when he saw Mark in the doorway. "You shouldn't be here." "I just wanted to see if it was okay," Mark said quietly. The man studied him for a long moment, then sighed. "Fine, but stay back." Mark nodded and took a small step away. His eyes stayed locked on the creature. Even with the incubator glass between them, he felt connected to it, like the moment he picked it up in the rain had created some invisible thread between them. A soft chirr sounded from inside the incubator. A strange, high-pitched noise. Not a bark, not a whine. Something completely different. The specialist leaned in closer. Then the older man turned to Dr. Rowan. "It's definitely reacting to sound. Its instincts are already developed." "That quickly," she whispered. He nodded, "which means we don't have much time." Mark's stomach twisted. "Time for what?" The man didn't look at him when he answered. "To find out where it came from." Mark felt a cold wave wash over him. "You think the mother is nearby?" The older man finally turned to him, his expression serious. "If it is what we think it is, the mother won't be far, and she'll be looking." The room went completely silent. Mark's pulse hammered in his ears. The forest road, the quiet trees, the fog, the feeling that something was watching him even before he saw the tiny creature. He felt it all again. "What are you saying?" Mark whispered. The specialist lowered his voice. "That she might already be following the scent trail." A sudden gust of wind rattled the clinic windows. Everyone in the room tensed instinctively, exchanging uneasy glances. Mark stepped closer to the glass, staring at the small creature curled inside the incubator, breathing softly. He thought back to the rain-soaked road, the strange stillness, the uneasy feeling in his chest. He had assumed it was exhaustion or the long day, but now a new thought crept in, slow, chilling, unavoidable. He hadn't been alone on that road. Someone or something had been watching, waiting, and now that he had taken the newborn, whatever it was might be coming straight for it. The older specialist exchanged a quiet, tense whisper with Dr. Rowan. "We need to secure the area. Now." Dr. Harris locked the doors. The lights flickered once, and Mark felt something shift in the air, like the night outside was holding its breath. The real danger hadn't even begun yet. The silence in the vet's office stretched so long that Daniel began to feel every heartbeat echo in his ears. Dr. Patel kept staring at the small creature resting under the warm lamp, his finger tracing the edge of the medical chart without turning the page. Daniel could sense something shifting in the room, something heavy, something the vet was struggling to put into words. But just when Dr. Patel finally opened his mouth to explain what he had noticed earlier, the door behind them rattled with a sudden knock that made both of them jump slightly. A young assistant peeked in, her face pale, whispering something urgently to the doctor. Whatever she said made him stiffen, and for the first time since Daniel had known him, he saw pure alarm wash over Dr. Patel's face. He excused himself without explaining a thing, leaving Daniel alone with the puppy, or whatever it actually was. Daniel glanced at the tiny creature, curled up like a fragile bundle of warmth. Its breathing had steadied, but now that he looked closer, he noticed little details he had overlooked in a rush. The odd pattern on its ears, the unusual way its tail curled, the faint hum-like sound it made whenever it shifted. None of it looked dangerous, but it didn't look like any puppy he'd ever seen either. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Hey, buddy, will you?" The little animal stirred lightly, almost as if responding to his voice. For a moment, Daniel felt strangely connected to it, like it somehow understood he had tried to save it. But beneath that warmth was a growing fear, the kind that crawled up slowly when you realize you're in deeper than you meant to be. Through the thin walls, he heard muffled voices, Dr. Patel speaking quickly, the assistant sounding confused, and then someone else joining in with heavier footsteps. Daniel couldn't hear exact words, but he caught enough to know the vet wasn't just worried. He was calling someone important, someone who sounded official. And that only made Daniel's stomach twist more. He stepped closer to the door, straining to understand. The tone of urgency alone was enough to set off alarms in his mind. He had brought in what he thought was a lost puppy, maybe abandoned or separated from its mother. But now there were hushed conversations, sudden interruptions, and a vet who looked like he'd just uncovered something far bigger than a simple rescue story. When Daniel heard the assistant say, "Should we move it?" followed by Dr. Patel's sharp, "Not yet," he pulled back on the door, his pulse quickening. Move it? Why would they need to move a puppy? Unless it wasn't a puppy at all. He sat back down, trying to stay calm. Every instinct in him was wrestling with another. Part of him was worried for the little creature, another part worried for himself, and a third part wanted answers now, even if he wasn't sure he liked them. The small animal blinked up at him again with those deep, almost glassy eyes, and Daniel suddenly wondered if it had been alone on that road by accident or on purpose, and if someone or something was looking for it. Footsteps approached again, this time slower, heavier, more deliberate. Dr. Patel returned with two men Daniel had never seen before. They didn't introduce themselves. They didn't smile. They didn't even pretend this was routine. Instead, they scanned the room the moment they entered, their eyes moving like they were trained to assess danger. One of them gave a small nod toward the creature under the lamp, almost like confirmation. Daniel stood up, tense. "What's going on? What are you doing?" "I just found on the road." Dr. Patel held up a hand gently. "Daniel, I promise we're not here to cause trouble. But there's something you need to understand. This isn't just any animal. And before we continue, I need you to stay calm." Stay calm. That phrase never meant anything good. Before he could ask another question, the little creature suddenly lifted its head and released a soft, trembling sound, one unlike any puppy whine Daniel had heard before. The two men instantly shifted, one stepping forward protectively, the other placing a hand near his belt as if expecting something to happen. Daniel froze, realizing now that whatever this was, the reaction it triggered wasn't casual. It was trained, prepared, like they had seen something like this before. The sound stopped, but the room didn't feel any safer. The air felt thicker, heavier, as if everyone was afraid to make the next move. Dr. Patel took a slow breath. "It's not dangerous," he said, mostly directed at the two men. Then he looked at Daniel with a mixture of concern and reluctance. "But it does need to be handled very carefully. And you may have gotten involved in something without knowing it." Daniel's throat tightened. "Involved in what?" "I just picked it up. I didn't do anything wrong." "I know," Dr. Patel said softly. "But that doesn't change what it is." Again, Daniel waited for the explanation. Again, the doctor didn't finish. Instead, one of the men stepped closer to the exam table, pulling out a small tablet with a picture on the screen. It looked old, grainy, like it had been taken from a distance. But the creature in the picture, small, curled up, with the same strange markings, matched the one lying under the lamp almost perfectly. Daniel's stomach dropped. Where did that come from? The man didn't answer directly. "How long was it alone when you found it?" "I don't know. Maybe an hour? Maybe more. It was cold." It looked scared. The man exchanged a brief glance with the other, and something shifted in their expressions, not relief but worry, as if time mattered, as if being separated from something mattered. Dr. Patel cleared his throat. "There's more," he said quietly. "Daniel, when I did the initial scan, its readings weren't normal. They weren't even close. Its heartbeat pattern, its bone structure, its reflex response, none of it matches what a puppy should have." Daniel felt the room tilt just slightly. Not normal. Not a puppy. Not close. "So, what is it?" he whispered. No one answered immediately. Everyone looked at the creature instead. as if waiting to see if it would do something again. And then, just when Daniel thought he couldn't take the silence anymore, the lights in the room flickered, only for a second. But every person in the room tensed at the same time, including Dr. Patel. Daniel stared at the flickering bulb above them, then back at the small creature that hadn't moved at all. His breath caught in his throat as a new fear crept in. One he couldn't name yet, one that didn't make sense, but one that felt very, very real. Whatever he had rescued on that empty road wasn't just unusual. It was connected to something larger, something watching, something getting closer. And somewhere inside the vet's office, an alarm Daniel hadn't noticed before began to beep, a slow, rising signal that made every head in the room turn at once, including his. The alarm kept beeping in steady, rising pulses, each one louder than the last. It wasn't the kind of alarm Daniel had ever heard in a vet clinic before. Too sharp, too focused, too deliberate. The two men exchanged a look that confirmed everything Daniel had feared. They knew exactly what that sound meant, and they didn't like it. Dr. Patel hurried toward a small panel on the wall, checking the screen with trembling hands. "It's picking up a signal," he murmured. "Stronger than before." One of the men stepped forward. "How strong?" "Strong enough," the doctor said, his voice low, "that whatever we've been waiting for, it's close." Daniel felt ice spread through his veins. His eyes darted to the tiny creature, still curled under the warm lamp. It didn't look dangerous. It didn't even look awake. But the men's tense posture, the doctor's shaking hands, and the alarm that kept pulsing all told him the same thing. This was the moment they had feared. "What's happening?" Daniel demanded. "Just tell me. I deserve to know." The second man finally spoke, his voice calm but heavy. "You're right. You do. And we don't have time to explain everything slowly. What you picked up on that road, it wasn't abandoned." He paused. "It was left behind." Daniel blinked. Left behind? By who? Before the man could answer, the entire building trembled. Just a small vibration, barely noticeable, but enough to make the equipment on the counters rattle. The assistant gasped and stepped back, staring at the ceiling like something might burst through at any moment. The man continued, each word careful. "It belongs to a species we've only encountered a handful of times. They're rare, extremely rare, and they don't separate from their young voluntarily. If this one was alone, it means a parent is already searching for it." Daniel felt his breath stop. "Parent? You mean there's another one out there?" "There always is," the man said. The lights flickered again, harder this time. The beeping alarm jumped to a rapid, almost frantic tempo. The air in the room felt charged, like a storm pushing against the walls. Dr. Patel turned around, his voice breaking. "We need to secure the building now." But it was too late. A deep, low hum filled the air, vibrating through the floors. Daniel could feel it in his bones. The little creature lifted its head suddenly, eyes glowing with a soft shimmer that wasn't natural, wasn't normal. The warm lamp beside it flickered wildly, then shattered with a tiny pop, sending sparks across the table. The two men stepped in front of Daniel instinctively, shielding him from the sparks. "It's responding," one muttered. "It senses it." Outside, something heavy landed on the ground, so heavy that the windows rattled. Something alive. The assistant screamed and ran toward the back room, but Dr. Patel stopped her. "Stay here. Don't split up." Daniel, heart racing, forced himself closer to the table. The little creature was trying to stand, wobbling on unsteady legs, its small body glowing faintly like a heartbeat of light pulsing through it. It looked up at him, and for a moment he felt the same strange connection he had felt the day he picked it up. The hum outside grew louder, closer. The men drew closer to the door, preparing for something. Daniel still didn't understand exactly what they were expecting, but he could feel the weight of it pressing against the walls. Then, with one final trembling pulse, the creature let out a soft cry, high and ringing, almost musical. The hum stopped. Everything went quiet. The silence was so sudden and so complete that it made Daniel's ears ring. Even the alarm froze mid-beep, its light blinking uselessly. The men stiffened, shoulders tense like coiled springs. And then the front door of the clinic slowly eased open, not kicked, not forced, just nudged with deliberate gentleness. The air shifted as something stepped inside. Daniel couldn't see its full form, only a broad silhouette, tall and curved, with smooth movements that didn't match anything familiar. The two men blocked Daniel instantly. "Don't move," one whispered, but the figure didn't advance. Instead, it stopped a few feet inside the doorway and released a soft, echoing sound, the same tone the small creature had made moments ago. The tiny animal responded immediately, letting out a weak chirp in return. Dr. Patel slowly stepped aside. "It's calming down," he whispered. Daniel took a shaky breath. The tension in the air loosened, not gone, but shifting into something else, something less threatening, more emotional. The tall figure moved forward just enough for its outline to take shape. Its posture wasn't aggressive. It wasn't attacking. It wasn't hunting. It was searching. The creature on the table struggled upright again, and with a small, trembling step, it reached toward the edge as if trying to get closer. One of the men exhaled. "It's the mother." Daniel felt something inside him soften, despite the fear. For the first time since this started, he understood the real conflict. This wasn't about danger. It was about reunion. The mother moved closer until she was only a few feet from the table. Her presence filled the room, warm and powerful. The little creature made one more weak sound, and she responded with a soft, resonant hum that felt like a lullaby vibrating through the floor. The two men lowered their guard. Dr. Patel let out a long, shaking breath. Daniel stepped forward slowly. "I didn't mean to take it. I only wanted to save it." The mother's silhouette shifted slightly, turning toward him. He couldn't see her face, but he felt something pass between them, an understanding, a strange calm settling into his chest. Then, with careful movements, she extended her arms, gently lifting the creature from the table. The tiny animal curled into her hold immediately, glowing softly against her. Just when Daniel thought the moment had ended, just when he thought the climax had reached its peak, the mother paused. She turned back toward him, and in one fluid, unexpected motion, she extended her free hand toward him, placing something small and warm into his palm. He looked down, confused. It was a small, smooth stone, or something that looked like a stone, glowing softly with the same pulse as the little creature's skin. The hum returned for just a moment, soft and brief, as if she was telling him something. Then she was gone. No explosion, no chaos, no sound, just a sudden sweep of light, and a feeling like the air had folded around her. The two men stood frozen. Dr. Patel wiped his eyes without realizing it. Daniel stared at the glowing stone in his hand, feeling its warmth travel up his arm and into his chest. Whatever he had rescued, whatever world it belonged to, it hadn't left without leaving something behind, something meant for him. And as the last pulse of light faded into his skin, Daniel realized the story wasn't over. Not even close. For a long moment, Daniel stood completely still, staring at the small glowing stone resting in his palm. It pulsed gently, like it had a heartbeat of its own, warm enough to feel alive, but light enough to forget it was even there. The room around him had fallen into a strange hush, as if everyone was still trying to understand what they had just witnessed. Even the air felt different, softer, calmer, as though whatever tension had filled the clinic minutes earlier had finally lifted. Dr. Patel took a deep breath and steadied himself before walking over. "Daniel," he said gently, "are you all right?" Daniel nodded slowly. I think so." He glanced at the door where the mother creature had disappeared. "What just happened? What did she leave me?" The two official-looking men finally lowered their weapons and stepped closer, their expressions no longer tense but thoughtful. One of them examined the glowing stone from a respectful distance, without trying to take it. "She gave you a marker," he said quietly, "a sign of trust in their species. Passing on a piece of their energy means they see you as part of their circle. It's rare, almost unheard of." Daniel blinked. "Why me? I didn't do anything special." "You saved her child," the man replied. "Most people would have driven past. You didn't." Dr. Patel nodded beside him. "And you cared for it before we even knew what it was. That matters." Daniel looked back down at the stone, feeling the warmth spread through his fingers. It wasn't scary or dangerous. It felt peaceful, like a promise he didn't fully understand yet. He thought of the moment he had first seen the tiny creature shaking on the side of the road, how instinct pushed him to stop. It wasn't logic. It wasn't fear. It was simply compassion. And somehow, that choice had connected him to something much larger than he ever imagined. The assistant stepped forward, still wide-eyed. Is that thing going to, I don't know, explode or something? One of the men let out a short, calm breath. No, it's harmless. It's more symbolic than anything. Think of it as a message. A message of what? Daniel asked. That you're remembered, the man said, and that your kindness didn't go unnoticed. The room fell silent again, but this time the silence felt warm instead of heavy. Daniel finally closed his hand around the stone, letting its faint glow seep between his fingers. He felt strangely grounded, like the last few hours, wild as they were, had led to this final moment of stillness. The men gathered their equipment, preparing to leave. Before they reached the door, Daniel stopped them. Will she come back? He asked. The mother? Both men exchanged a look before one of them answered. Not unless she needs to. Their kind prefers to remain hidden. But movements like theirs, they don't forget faces or kindness. With that, they nodded to Dr. Patel and left the clinic quietly, slipping into the fading light outside. Their vehicle pulled away with barely a sound, leaving Daniel standing in a room that suddenly felt too big for all the emotions he carried. Dr. Patel placed a hand on his shoulder. You should go home and rest, he said softly. You've been through enough for one day. Daniel almost laughed at how much of an understatement that was, but he simply nodded. He thanked the doctor and the assistant, still unsure of the right words, and stepped out into the cool evening air. The sky above him had settled into a deep blue, scattered with stars that seemed brighter than usual. Or maybe he just noticed them more now. He walked to his car slowly, the glowing stone still held carefully in his hand. When he reached the driver's seat, he hesitated before placing it on the dashboard. The soft light bounced across the interior, warming the space in a way he couldn't explain. He sat there for a moment, listening to the quiet hum of the night, trying to put together everything he had learned. He thought about how ordinary the day had started. A simple drive, a simple stop, a simple decision to help a small creature that looked helpless and alone. And yet it had spiraled into a discovery he could never share with anyone, not fully. Who would believe him? Who could understand? But he didn't regret any of it. The drive home felt strangely calming. The stone glowed faintly the entire ride. Not too bright, just enough to remind him that the world was bigger and more mysterious than people realized. When he finally parked in front of his house, he held the stone again and felt that soft pulse, steady and warm. Inside his home, everything felt normal, almost too normal after such an unbelievable day. He placed the stone gently on a small shelf near his living room window. Its glow lit the room with a soft, comforting light. Daniel sat on the couch, allowing himself to finally breathe deeply, letting the events of the day settle into something real. Later in the night, when the world was quiet, he found himself staring at the stone again. The gentle glow seemed to shift in rhythm, almost like it responded to his presence. And for a moment, he felt something he couldn't quite describe. Not fear, not confusion, just connection. As he closed his eyes, letting the weight of the day melt away, he realized that this story had changed him in ways he hadn't expected. He understood now that even the smallest act of kindness could ripple out to places he might never see. Saving what he thought was a simple puppy had brought him face to face with something extraordinary, something rare, something that trusted him enough to leave a part of itself behind. In the days that followed, Daniel returned to his routine, but nothing felt quite the same. The stone remained in his home, glowing gently each night, a quiet reminder of the moment his life intersected with something beyond human understanding. He never saw the mother creature again. He never heard from the two men or encountered another strange signal. Life returned to normal. But Daniel knew he carried something with him that wasn't normal at all. He carried the memory of that fragile creature he had saved. He carried the gratitude of a mother who had risked everything to find her child. and he carried the understanding that kindness was more powerful than fear. Sometimes, when the night was especially still, Daniel would swear he felt a faint hum in the air, soft, distant, almost like a whisper. And each time, he would look toward the glowing stone and smile. Not because he expected anything more to happen, but because he finally understood that what he did had mattered far beyond what he could see. And that was enough.